Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Star Trek, the Q conflict. A series of unusual supernovae have been erupting within the Beta Quadrant, thanks to a war between supposedly godlike beings, including the Q. Our favorite John Delancey-looking Q decided to pull together and mix up various Federation crews to act as proxies to settle the matter in a series of challenges. Janeway's squad drew first victory, and now they await the next contest. Issue 3's cover features the Enterprise E and Voyager cruising together from a large starburst of some kind. After the credits page is a handy guide to who's on what team, and then a previously on that, frankly, I think there was enough space they could have put it with the credits and saved themselves a page. See? We begin in neutral ground garden, I suppose, what with the shrubs and chess piece hedges. Q tells the coaches to talk to their teams, though the other entities don't care for how he's just taking charge. Trelane says he'll put him in his place, which Metron thinks is childish, which is perhaps just a segue so Aelborn can clarify to the readers, who have not seen much OG Trek, that Trelane is technically a child, as his species goes. Kirk's team would get disqualified when Trelane's mom tells him he's out past his bedtime. Indeed, his parents tend to let him do whatever, so it's really their fault he's a bratty little latchkey godling. Aelborn and the Metron only agreed to this competition as it was their best way to stop Q's attacks on them, as well as all the collateral damage, and while they can't really take him at his word, they're willing to let things play out for now. Q decides to change clothes for the appearance of impartiality, though I imagine wearing a Federation uniform kind of conveys the opposite of that. He then begins admonishing Jean-Luc for his loss, who in turn begins a lecture about his exponential capacity for self-centeredness. It's a scene all too familiar to his crew, and something Odo thinks would eventually be used to their advantage. Spoiler alert, that never happens. Odo's plan to make a simple box trap with a sign reading "Argument with Picard" inside would not be the success he had hoped for. "You nearly won last time. It was a valiant effort, absolutely smashing. While I have nothing but admiration for your efforts, you must do better next time. I insist."
You often pick words for sound rather than meaning.
When pressed by Kirk, he admits to agreeing to this tournament because Q promised to cease hostilities against him. According to Metron, talking to Janeway's team, this is all Q's way of ending the war while saving face, even if Picard provided some motivation. He claims Q, who's back in his robes all of a sudden, has been more chaotic of late, and though sympathetic to the humans, they need to carry on so that he'll eventually find something else to give his attention to. Has he tried collecting Funko Pops? Either someone forgot where 709 was assigned, or she just wanted to get some distance from her team captain bickering with their cosmic mascot. Aelborn apologizes to his representatives for all this, and will keep them safe in accordance with the outlined rules, but doesn't want to provoke Q into restarting his aggression, and they can't just let him win, or that would just result in the same unfortunate outcome. It's time for the next challenge, and after claims that he's coveted the administration role for his idea of holding the games, Trelane will decide the second test. So the Squire of Gothos picks a no-holds-barred 4-starship battle, but the captains immediately refuse, even if everyone would be healed afterwards. Better listen, Trelane. Cisco punched Q in the face without hesitation. Don't think he won't slug a cosmic dandy. Instead, it'll be a classic capture the flag, with Cisco and Picard as Team Blue against Janeway and Kirk on Team Red, using strategy and tactical thinking to capture 3 enemy flags via tractor beams to win. Assured there'll be no use of weapons or interference from Q, everyone agrees and the match begins. Each Enterprise guards their respective giant flags, while their partnerships go on the offensive. But Trelane is already bored, going to each ship, possibly at once, complaining that there's no strategy or excitement. "We were promised no interference if we agreed to this farce." "You were promised that by Q, not me." "Same goes for his promise not to eat all the Hot Pockets and Fudgesicles in your freezers." To liven things up, Trelane brings in a new player, the defeat of which will decide the victor, something familiar to the TOS crew. A really, really invasive metallic telescope? Okay, you pervs are letting your Uhura fixation go way too far. Chekhov explains that it's a planet killer, a weapon his crew barely escaped when they encountered it, destroying planets by devouring them for fuel. Ah, I see. It's Galactus' silly straw. Phasers are ineffective against its neutronium hull, and despite Kirk's warning, Sisko flies the Defiant in for a closer look, only for an energy beam to fire, which doesn't seem to directly hit the vessel, yet is enough to knock out their engines and cut their shields in half. I guess fortune didn't favor the bold this time. As Kirk tows the Defiant to safety, Enterprise E hits the planet killer with quantum torpedoes, which are like photon torpedoes, but with a plasma warhead. They actually damage the weapon, not that we can see with that doggone ship in the way, so Voyager empties their own supply of quantum torpedoes to keep the heat on. Though the best target for that volley would be straight down the proverbial barrel of the gun, though that would make them easy to hit. Kirk and Picard quickly formulate a plan. Voyager and the Defiant, still carried by Kirk, will flank the planet killer from both sides to soften it up, while the Enterprise E will face the monster head-on. 4 starships working in tandem against a galactic menace that feeds on entire worlds. Even on a comic page, this has the potential to be an epic visual treat. Notice I said potential. Yeah, we get a panel of the ships surrounding the killer, Odo saying the weapons are having an effect, and then the E right in front of the thing. Seems really subdued. But there is a big planet killer shattering kaboom from Picard's attack, though I'm not showing it, meaning victory is Picard's, and therefore Q's. Trelane is disappointed, saying things will need to be much more challenging for their players, so Q presents a box filled with dazzling energy, meaning that, much to Sisko and Kira's shock, he plans to bring the Prophets into the game. If you didn't watch DS9, the Prophets existed within the stable wormhole above planet Bajor and the titular Deep Space Nine. They displayed various powers like offering visions, so were seen as deities by Bajorans, like Major Kira. Also, Sisko is kind of their space Jesus. No, I think him turning water into Klingon blood wine was cut for time. Issue 4's cover is another larger picture split into 2 variants, this time of the characters in circles on either side of what I guess is supposed to be the aforementioned wormhole, but let's just say it doesn't quite resemble the one on the show. Picard goes to 10 forward to speak with his friend and ship's barkeep, Guinan, who has some unspecified history with Q and the Continuum. She suspects he's threatened by the other cosmic beings, got more than he bargained for with his preemptive strike against them, and these games are little more than a distraction, so he can recover before restarting his aggression. And probably it's to amuse himself. He got real into shadow puppetry for a while, but lost interest after 6 millennia, give or take. She also mentions keeping a low profile, but wouldn't Q already know if she's there? Not just because he knows she's friends with Picard, but also he has shown to be vastly aware of what's going on, even if he's not truly omniscient. They never did get into her abilities on the show, only that she comes from a race of listeners and are long-lived. When she met Q in TNG, she reacted like she could mount some kind of defense against him, and Q remarked there was more about her that Jean-Luc didn't know. Ambiguous setup that never had much payoff, for better or worse. Maybe she has some kind of personal cloak for those types of entities. Anyway, they have no other option but to play along for now. Guinan adds Q can't be trusted to keep his word, and has recently appeared more desperate, unlike what she's seen before. Picard leaves, assured she'll let him know if she senses anything further, and his old friend offers some encouragement, that he may have more allies than he thinks. Wait, do you mean Boothby, the elderly Starfleet Academy gardener? Not really sure what he could do to tip the scales in our favor, but if you insist. Q appears to him in the hallway, and the other captains, not sure why Kirk gets the monitors other than for maybe the reference, to tell them their break is over, and it's time to start the next match. He whisks the captains and the other higher beings to the roof of DS9, presumably keeping the mortals safe from dying out in space, to show them the Bajoran wormhole. Meanwhile, people inside are wondering why the still missing Voyager and old-school Enterprise are double-parked near the docking pylons. As mentioned before, the Prophets exist within the wormhole, but while powerful, they aren't gods, and they declined the invitation to Q's competition. With a 5th team, they could have involved Jonathan Archer's crew, and I wouldn't have had to have reworked 3 title cards I made before actually reading this story. The challenge is to get the Prophets to show themselves, which ticks Sisko off, saying that they aren't to be trifled with. that Q doesn't understand the forces he's toying with. He disagrees, of course, that they're barely worth more than a little diversion before more serious competition. He's backed up by Trelane, but Metron and Aelborn seem less convinced, which Kirk interprets as dissension in the ranks. I thought maybe this was omitting how these two already established they wanted nothing to do with these games, but then I remembered they haven't talked with James T., so I guess it makes sense that this would be kind of news to him. Janeway sees this as the opportunity they've been waiting for, and tells her allies to wait for her to contact them. Q doesn't give them any kind of clues or hints on how to get the Prophet's attention, expecting to be impressed by Starfleet ingenuity. Plan A. Send Neelix outside the wormhole holding up a boombox that's blasting a Van Halen power ballad. On the Enterprise E, 7 of 9 suggests firing on the fissure just enough to make themselves known, while Spock suggests flooding it with anti-tachyons on the opening. Odo echoes Sisko's concerns, that gods or not, the prophets are beyond anything he's seen, and weapons are an especially bad move. Both Crusher and Uhura don't feel right about just going along with this just because Q said so, especially if it leads to some retaliation. Picard understands what they're saying, but given the stakes at hand, they need to press forward, telling Geordi to go ahead with Spock's plan. Shortly, they're firing the anti-tachyons into the entrance, getting no reaction at first, while Sisko tries another approach. Followed by Dr. Bashir and Deanna Troi, he explains that the prophets want nothing to do with these games, so he'll try contacting them directly through meditation in his quarters. They aren't usually the chatty type, but Benjamin is their emissary. There has to be more to that title than blessing Bajoran weddings and that Burger King gift card. On the space station, Major Kira has been granted permission by her people's holy order to use an orb, one of many used by Bajorans for millennia that gives them visions and sometimes the ability to communicate with the prophets. Just as she opens the box, it turns out to be a mimic and she loses half her life bar. On Kirk's team, Jadzia Dax only sees one option: take the ship into the wormhole itself.
I thought insurance salesmen were pushy.
Since this is Dax from early in Season 3, I guess it can be forgiven that this comes off as too bold an idea for Sisko, when it happens several times throughout the show. Even Quark thought of it once. Anywho, O'Brien and Worf can get them in, but there's no guarantee of contact. Kirk is still on board, and they take the plunge, arriving at the appropriate coordinates. But even Dax isn't sure how to say hello. They open hailing frequencies so Jim can introduce himself and ask to speak with the prophets. We have an important message. Are you happy with your current internet provider? He suddenly finds himself in a white void, seeing an off-color image of Edith Keeler, a woman Kirk fell in love with in the episode The City on the Edge of Forever. See, when the prophets talk to someone, they appear as people that person knows, having imperceptible forms and all that. When Jim says they were sent by Q, Edith reacts viscerally and is swapped out for Captain Pike, Kirk's predecessor. The prophets assure they mean the explorers no harm, but Q, if he wants to see them so badly, they'll oblige. And is it just me, or does Vision Pike look an awful lot like Michael Keaton?
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
The Enterprise is spit out, looks kind of like a rough exit if you ask me, and the prophets confront Q, taking on the appearances he himself has donned throughout Trek. He just wanted to get them rattled, see how powerful they were, so they decide to demonstrate. Sisko senses something wrong, the orb turns its fog lights all the way up, and Guinan watches in horror as the wormhole pulls a massive palette swap, with space itself turning white and pulling Deep Space Nine into itself. And to top it all off, the Cardassian warranty expired 5 minutes ago. The prophets, now appearing as energy, warn that Q doesn't know what they're capable of, but will learn not to mess with them in the future. Ignoring his demands to stop, everything starts being pulled in the wormhole. The station, the ships, the panels. So much for not meaning any harm. When Q uses his own powers to reverse it all. And the comic ends on this struggle being observed by a young woman in a pink dress and a blonde man in a drab-looking onesie, who says they'll have to do something. This looks like a job for a strongly worded letter. Just when you think things couldn't get any crazier, they take a sudden right turn down Bonkers Avenue. Tune in next week to see how Q's efforts fare, who these new arrivals are, and if anyone else shows up to play. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.